Okay, so my short thriller film is going to be called Father's Day. It comes under the narrative, and that's why I'm going to go into more detail. Can I have the next slide, please? So our main conventions for this is danger, death, twist and suspense. I believe this will captivate the audience and leave them on the edge of their seats. For danger, I want some music to kind of make sure the audience's heart beating and care for the characters that I'm going to be introducing. I think it's another good convention for a thriller is death. Most of the characters sometimes die off in films, or it's left on a cliffhanger. There's also going to be flashbacks, which I think will be able to inform the audience and be able for them to understand what is going on in the narrative. In terms of camera shots, I will be using close-ups and a point of view shot, as it makes the audience feel like that they are there watching and they are participating in the action. I also want to be using low key lighting as another dark sense of a convention for a thriller film. Next slide, please. So my narrative is about a character called Martin Banks, who is in a lot of trouble and he has done something horrific to cause what's just happened. It will affect his life and it will also bring shame to his family. So we are first introduced to him when there's a blackout. You hear a door opening. The character Martin, is breathing heavily. You are still uncertain of who that character is. And then you hear the door open again and you hear a gunshot. And then the first opening shot is of Martin, who is on the floor. So it's a point of view shot of the guy who's just nearly shot Martin. We are then introduced to the character who has just shot Martin. It is his father. He's called George Banks. He's got a shotgun and he's threatening Martin. They will be having a brief conversation and it will be very fast-paced and extremely intense for the audience to watch. Martin is begging his father not to do this, and his father George is saying, well, don't you remember when you were little kids? And then all of a sudden there's a flashback. And the first shot of the flashback is a point of view shot of the father looking out into the kitchen. It's around evening, so I'd say 6 o'clock-ish time, a bit dark for an evening. And he hears a scream and he goes outside and he realises that Martin, who's now younger, is playing in a treehouse with his friend Billy. And George Banks, the father, walks up the ladder to the treehouse and he asks Martin, what's happened, what's gone on? And Martin said to his dad that he's pushed Billy off the treehouse, and the father's ashamed and shocked. And he said, well, Martin, you know what happens to others when you punish them. And so his dad pushes him off the treehouse. Then it flashbacks to present day, and you've now got George, Dad, aiming the gun at Martin, saying, I'm really sorry, but you know what I've got to do. You know what the consequences that you've got to face. And so it's a blackout, and then you hear the gunshot, and the audience assumes that Martin is dead. That's my basic narrative. When explaining it to my focus group, I suddenly realised of how dark the storyline actually was, and the reaction that I got from Lewis, who was in my focus group, and he was just lost for words, which I thought was kind of a good thing and a negative thing as well. Please have the next slide. So the characters. George, the dad, he's in power because he's the father. He is he controls Martin because he's his father. I think Gary Oldman would be a very good selective actor for him to play, as he's experienced and he has a wide range of accents. He can do many types of characters. Martin, I would say, is the victim. He's begging for his life. I think he'd be played by Martin Seahall, who plays Dexter. He's quite an insane character. And Tom Hardy as well as another consideration. He's another fantastic actor who played Bronson, who is another insane character in that film. Next slide, please. My target audience research. So I asked on SurveyMonkey what my location should be, and I got some fantastic responses. I got an empty house, the city, a library, the woods, and an isolated area. I like the isolated areas as that's where most thrillers are basically set. I asked about dialogue, and I got an even response with it. Should there be dialogue in a short thriller? Some people were saying, of course there should be, and others were saying, no, not all short thrillers have dialogue. So I think for my decision, I'm going to use brief dialogue and use the camera angles as suspense as the film will develop. I asked them what elements a thriller film would consist. They said a twist, suspense, be realistic, which I think is a massive thing to consider for a thriller, as you want to have the audience feel like it could happen to them. A few characters, to keep it extremely basic, and excitement and music. Next slide, please. My focus group, they said a grayscale, and I like that idea as it kind of an old-fashioned sort of feel to the film. Most thrillers are set in present day, and I wouldn't mind kind of basing it not like in the 90s, but perhaps a bit like Sin City, perhaps like a feel to Sin City, that it's set in present day, but it's got an older feel about it. Another thing that became quite clear is that my focus group was quite unclear on what characters were who. So that's why I decided to give the name of the father George, and so that'd be easier for the audience to realise what character is and how old they are and who would they be playing. Please go to the next slide. My target audience. I want to choose my target audience for males aged between 50 and 30, people who like spy thriller and action films, and I also think YouTube is a fantastic target audience, as I would say most young people watch short thrillers via the YouTube channel. Vimeo is another fantastic website that you could be using for your target audience, but I'm going to set my target audience around males specifically, as I think it would appeal to them the most. Please go to the next slide. Thank you. Things to consider. My rating that I would give this film is a 15, as I would be using quite a lot of violence and intense scenes. I would have the credits at the end, and I would say that similar films come to mind of my film is the Bourne franchise, as that is very unquestioning. Not much isn't given away in the films. You have to really pay attention and focus, and you have sort of this feeling for Bourne, as he is very innocent. Next slide. How will it attract my audience? I think the narrative is extremely strong and dark, and I believe that will really captivate my audience and want more. I like the idea of leaving it as a cliffhanger, so you're uncertain if the father does shoot Martin. The audience can decide for their own what happens. Unanswered questions, as I mentioned before, is another fantastic element of a thriller, which I want to use. The soundtrack and the tension between characters. So I think there'll be quite a lot of shot-reverse shots between Martin and George, as it will cause tension and eeriness, I suppose, between both characters. Please go to the next slide. This is my music that I have chosen. Before I let it play, I've considered it to be the first bit of the film, and it kind of sets the scene. So if you wouldn't mind playing for me. Thank you. So the music I would describe as demanding and a bit repetitive. I can imagine it being the intro of the film, and perhaps a door slam could break the tension between the music, and a gunshot could happen as well. It's straight into the action. I think it helps with my narrative of the music. It's suspenseful, and it has a good climax, I would say. And it also builds up to what will happen later in the film. That is my slide. Thank you very much.
Excellent, Dan. The message you want to send to your audience is what?
My message, I would say, is to assume that what happens, you've always got to face the consequences. I've been trying to think of taglines. I came up with an eye for an eye. I thought that could be my basic starting point, but I could also develop something better.
Well, there's this thing about consequences and actions.
Yeah.
You know, the consequence. So you could say you could have the consequences of actions, or actions of consequences, or something like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Could be quite interesting. Have you given any thought to how you might film the treehouse scene?
I kind of like using the point of view shots from the father's perspective. So like he's looking out into the kitchen window, and then I like the idea of having like another point of view shot where he's climbing up the ladder.
And have you got a treehouse to film in?
Yes, I have. Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've given that into consideration.
Right. Okay. Right. Have you thought about who you might cast? I know your ideal casting was brilliant. Have you given a thought as to who you actually might cast?
I've got a friend who is in his mid-20s. He's very good. He's a very good actor. I've worked with him. And because I know quite a lot of people in Cambridge, I think I'd be able to ask them for a favour and see if they'd be up for doing a couple of minutes shooting with me if they felt like it.
I'm going to challenge you a little bit here on the choice of music. It felt very Terminator-y type, science fiction-y. Why did you choose something like that and not something more little family?
I kind of pictured it straight away in my film. Like it felt like it was absolutely right. I don't know why. It just felt the dun dun dun, and it was I just pictured it like a door slamming, closing, someone breathing, and then another door slamming, closing, and then a gunshot. It kind of worked in like a kind of a repetition, so it would definitely work, I think, for doors and sound effects over the top over it.
I think the audience might want an explanation to this, which is why does the father react in this way? You know, what is it about the father that's that makes him shoot his own son? That's quite extreme.
I know. The thing is, I don't want to tell the audience what he's done, so it's kind of an unanswered question.
So it's something that's peed off the father.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I've got to definitely know what it is, but I won't say what it is.
Oh, right, okay. I'm wondering about, but I'm going back further than that as well. In the treehouse incident, why does the father push his son off? I mean, okay, so I can see why he does it. Perhaps that doesn't. But you were talking rather interestingly about, one of the things I'm interested about is the time setting you set this in. Yeah. Because I wonder if it's more powerful to set it a little bit further back. This is the old story about, if people couldn't go to war, whether it would be the First or the Second World War, the men were so racked with guilt that some of them would go to the extreme of committing suicide. Yeah. So I wonder whether or not there's any mileage in setting it in the past,
so
that the father actually feels guilty that he didn't go to war, but instead of taking it out on himself, he left it in there, this bubbling anger. Then,
so perhaps you could have like, I don't know, medals, like shots of medals, or
or he didn't get any medals, so that's maybe the point. Maybe he just has a gun.
I understand where you're going. Because back in those days they were very strict, weren't they, on
well, your opening sequence, if you got a shotgun, and say it was a shotgun or something like that, the whole opening sequence for the first minute could just be really tight close up panning along it. And then when it gets to the barrel at the end, it gets picked up. Yeah. It's simple, but it's also, there's lots of connotations as to what that means, and I think the audience is going to want some kind of explanation. And if you're going to do that, I think the explanation should all be in the last line. Just because you didn't go to war, you're taking it out on me. And then he goes, cut to black, boom. But who shot who, and you still live in it.
Well, that's why Mum left, so I don't know,
do you need something? What you need is something so powerful that it makes the audience go, oh, and then bang, and then they go, oh my God, don't you? And I think it's got the potential to do this. The film. The length concerns me a little bit, and the sheer amount of dialogue that's going to be needed to tell this story. But other than that, I like that. What you called it, Father's Day. Yeah.
Another also consideration for an opening sequence is perhaps shots of Father's Day cards, but I quite like the idea of a shotgun. But I suppose if I had time, I could do two and then probably decide.
Absolutely. Or one could be the beginning, one could be the end.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Brilliant. Dan, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.